Oh, hello, yes. Well, it is Friday. Thank goodness for that. It's been a staggeringly slow week. Even in terms of the news, really. It feels that so much is going on and yet so little at the same time. The fallout from, well, various budgetary things from a few days ago still continues with everybody agreeing that, well, it was just appalling what the Labour Party are doing. Phew, eh? As they always do, don't they? Yes, Gordon Brown and gold and pensions and Tony Blair and immigration and, well, Rachel Reeves not knowing anything about economics. So it was definitely up to the Reform Party to outline exactly where things were going wrong, and probably best summed up by new woman Sarah Pochine over on Talk TV chatting to Julia Hartley-Brewer yesterday. Yeah, Julia Hartley-Brewer grills, ooh, Reform MP Sarah Pochine over how the party will pay for raising the personal tax allowance to £20,000. Well, you're going to need your numbers to add up if you're going to be a credible government in waiting. Indeed, but of course they aren't a credible government in waiting, are they? It's if anything, it's a kind of archetypal British carry-on film of a party. I mean, it would make a good 1960s comedy. Yes, Nurse Lee Anderson, Ding Dong, or ha 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 ha, as indeed various cast members would say. It really is a bit of a mess. Anyway, let's see what Sarah came out with vis-a-vis these enormously huge savings, which definitely are going to work, and definitely are going to work because we've figured it all out. Let's have a listen to this.
But you also want to spend a lot of money, which frankly isn't accounted for by taxes either. So where would you get the money from for what you want to do?
Look, one of the most important thing about reform and what we stand for is growing, providing the environment for the economy to grow. So there's things like, why did this Labour government put the national insurance contributions on businesses? That's affecting jobs. That's affecting growth. So for example, the income tax level, Reform have talked about raising that to £20,000. Now, yes, that's going to cost money, but
not going to cost money. It's going to cost an absolute fortune.
But Julia, the trouble with governments is that they're all into short-term policies. Over 5 years, that policy of raising the income tax threshold to £20,000, that creates jobs, it stimulates growth, it gets people back into the workplace. And let's face it, our welfare bill is enormous. That has to be cut. And one of the ways of cutting it is making it worthwhile people.
I hate to tell you, there are quite a lot of people, and I know people who work in the benefits offices, the job centres, quite a lot of people who, doesn't matter what work could pay, they're still not going to go and work because they've got free money. So unless that came alongside very strict sticks as well as carrots, as in work's going to be more worthwhile for you, you are going to have to actually take an awful lot of people off those welfare rolls of working.
Yes, I mean, it's just basically cutting things, okay? Yeah, we're going to magically grow the economy. If you recall, the Labour Party were going to magically grow the economy. The Conservatives were certainly going to magically grow the economy. Yes, oddly sort of pie in the, well, floating around as they do, and an awful load of wish in terms of its thinking. I mean, later on in the day there was Zia Youssef who was explaining exactly where his new Doge unit is going to make enormous savings, so everything will be fine. But the best he could come up with is basically people going on a trampolining trip. If we combine that with the enormous savings there are in Durham from Darren Grimes of one pride flag, we can see that the total savings, if we count all of those kind of measures over the year, will be, I don't know, what, £50,000? Yeah, you can see exactly how that's going to make the economy boom everywhere. But the issue about this, of course, it is simply about cutting, because the Reform Party are just the Tories Mark II. You can't get away from it. They are simply your Liz Truss-style libertarians, and whilst they might complain bitterly that they are the new kids on the block, an awful lot of them do look suspiciously like ex-Tory MPs or indeed councillors, Sarah notwithstanding, and they don't really exude, well, what one might call brand new thinking. It's just the same old thing, and hoping that Julia won't grill them, or indeed anyone else. If we actually go to the Reform website themselves. They make it very clear exactly what they're going to do. They will impose on government departments savings of 5%. Now, I'm using the word savings sort of, well, quite loosely there, because what, of course, that means is simply cuts. And what I think a lot of people don't actually realise when they talk about, oh, well, the efficiency of the private sector, and we get these people and they really know what they're doing. What happens, realistically, is you impose cuts and targets from above. So they percolate down till eventually they reach the people right at the bottom. Because the people at County Hall, should we say, aren't going to cut the people at County Hall because they're the people they work with. And, Barbara's just had a baby, so we couldn't possibly let her go. So what they'll do is they'll pass it down to the people actually running the stuff on the ground in the neighbourhood office. And the people in the neighbourhood offices obviously need that level of admin support because, well, they just do, don't they? And again, Barry's really not been having a great time of it, so we couldn't possibly let him go. So basically what they decide to do is just not advertise for new posts when they come up. So you just end up with no social workers or nurses or insert important job here. That's the psychology of that stuff. You meet your cuttings targets, savings targets, right? You meet the targets, but it doesn't improve the service in the slightest. Nothing happens. Everything gradually becomes worse and worse and worse. And all of that stuff you hear about bloated bureaucracies actually does come true. But it isn't the fault of the people there. If you want to grow an economy, and there's no logical reason why particularly you should do that, there are a number of ways that you can do it. But you don't do it by cutting people's benefits like Sarah suggested, and indeed Julia would like to cheer on. And you don't do it by fiddling around with pathetic amounts of money like Darren Grimes or indeed Zia Youssef does. It's just smoke and mirrors, a bit like Elon Musk. He had all that fraud he found. Anyone been convicted of fraud over that? No, of course not, because it's not fraud, it's just things we don't like. We don't like people that are brown going on trampolining trips, so we'll present that as a huge victory for common sense. Anyway, simple things if you want an economy to work. By all means, do give the people at the bottom more money. But that includes everybody at the bottom. It just doesn't mean picking out certain winners and losers, because the losers are always the same people. And the issue in our economy is that the winners are always the people at the top, have been for about 40 years. You can't get away from that. And you can complain about taxing wealth creators and the rest of it. But it seems that wealth that's being created just goes to them. And that's the statistics. You can't get away from that. And until somebody is prepared to actually do something about that, an actual radical party, something that isn't Liz Truss Mark II, then we'll just bumble along like we are with, for example, the Labour Party, making things just very slightly better, just a little bit, but not really doing anything. We used to have politicians quite recently who had a sort of dramatic view of how you could get things to be better for people at the bottom, but it was decided that was just simply anti-Semitism. So you can't have that. Anyway, try and have a nice weekend. At least it's sunny, so you can sun your deliciously lovely body. And think about all those great savings that they'll be made by not taking people to trampolining.